Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Who knew 5 years could fly by so fast? I mused aloud, staring at the candlelit table my husband, Jake, had set up. It was our fifth anniversary, and he'd gone all out. Candles, roses, my favorite pasta dish. I should have been over the moon, but instead, I felt a knot in my stomach. As he raised his glass, his smile didn't reach his eyes. To us, he toasted, but his voice lacked its usual warmth. I echoed his words, but my mind was elsewhere. Midway through the meal, my phone buzzed. A text from my boss, Mr. Reynolds. Can't stop thinking about our last meeting. Dinner soon? My heart skipped a beat. I quickly hid the phone under my napkin, but not before Jake's sharp eyes caught the action. Everything okay? He asked, his eyebrows knitting together. Work stuff. I replied too quickly, plastering a fake smile on my face. The following weeks were a blur of late nights at the office and hushed phone calls I thought Jake didn't notice. But he did. His casual inquiries about my work hours and who I was talking to became more frequent. I brushed them off, saying it was just the stress of the new project I was working on. Then came the promotion. It felt like a victory, but Jake's reaction was lukewarm. Isn't Reynolds your boss? Seems like he's favoring you a bit too much, he remarked one night, his tone laced with suspicion. I laughed it off, telling him he was imagining things. But the truth was, my relationship with Mr. Reynolds had crossed professional boundaries. I was walking on a tightrope, balancing my marriage and this exhilarating but dangerous liaison with my boss. One night, I told Jake I had to work late again. I left in a hurry, not noticing him following me from a distance. I met Mr. Reynolds at a discreet downtown bar, our usual spot for clandestine meetings. We talked, laughed, and he touched my hand across the table. I was so caught up in the moment that I didn't see Jake standing outside, watching us through the window. When I got home, Jake confronted me. So, working late, huh? The hurt in his voice was unmistakable. I stood there, frozen, words failing me for the first time. The reality of what I was risking hit me hard. But it was too late. The trust between us was shattered, like a glass dropped on a hard floor. Jake had seen enough, and so had I. The realization of my betrayal, the love I was jeopardizing, all came crashing down on me. But the worst part? I wasn't sure if I was ready to give up the thrill of the forbidden for the comfort of the familiar. Business trip to Atlanta, I lied smoothly, avoiding Jake's gaze. He nodded, distracted by the morning news. I felt a pang of guilt, but brushed it aside. This weekend with Mr. Reynolds was something I convinced myself I deserved. A break from the mundane, a step into a world where I felt wanted, alive. The getaway was a blur of luxury and forbidden romance. Mr. Reynolds made me feel like I was the center of his universe. But every stolen moment was shadowed by the reality I was leaving behind. Returning home, I found Jake waiting up. His eyes, usually so warm, were cold and probing. How was the trip? He asked, his voice edged with suspicion. Fine. Just the usual meetings, I replied, my voice a little too high-pitched. But Jake wasn't buying it. Are you seeing someone else? He asked directly, his eyes searching mine for the truth. I felt cornered, trapped. That's ridiculous, Jake. I'm just really busy with work, I countered, my voice steady but my heart racing. Days passed, and the distance between us grew. I spent more time at work, more nights away. Home felt like a battleground, each conversation with Jake a delicate dance around the truth. Then, one day, he found it. The receipt from the hotel. I'd been careless, leaving it in my purse. When I came home, he was sitting at the kitchen table, the damning piece of paper in front of him. Is there anything you want to tell me? He asked, his voice eerily calm. I looked at him, then at the receipt, and knew my web of lies had unraveled. But I wasn't ready to confess. Not yet. It's not what you think, I said, but even to my ears, it sounded weak. The air between us was thick with unspoken words and broken trust. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I told Jake I needed space, time to think. Maybe we should separate for a while, I suggested, my voice barely a whisper. His reaction was one of resigned sadness, not anger or surprise. He just nodded, and in that moment, I felt like I'd lost something precious. But the thrill of the affair, the allure of being desired, was a siren song I couldn't resist. As I packed a bag with my essentials, I glanced back at the life I was leaving behind, a life of comfort, stability, and love. A life with Jake. But the path I was choosing was different, uncertain, and dangerously exciting. And as I closed the door behind me, I couldn't help but wonder if I was making the biggest mistake of my life. New beginnings. I captioned the photo of the sleek downtown apartment I now shared with Mr. Reynolds. It felt thrilling yet surreal. This new chapter of my life splashed across social media for all to see. The likes and comments poured in, a mix of surprise, envy, and thinly veiled judgment. Jake found out, of course. He must have seen the post or heard through our intertwined network of friends. One evening, he showed up unannounced, standing at my new doorstep, a mix of hope and despair in his eyes. "I miss you," he said simply, his voice cracking. "Please, let's try to work this out." I stood there, torn. Here was the man I'd shared my life with, offering forgiveness, yet I was drawn to this new, exhilarating life with Mr. Reynolds. "I can't, Jake. I'm sorry," I whispered, closing the door on my past, on a love that had turned into a memory. Life with Mr. Reynolds was a whirlwind of luxury and travel. He promised me the world, and it seemed he was more than capable of delivering it. We jetted off to exotic locations, dined at the finest restaurants, and I was showered with gifts and attention. I documented it all on social media, a showcase of my glamorous new life. But as I scrolled through my feed, flaunting this seemingly perfect world, I couldn't ignore the whispers and stares, both online and in real life. Friends began to distance themselves, their messages becoming less frequent, their tones changing from warm to formal. I was becoming a topic of gossip, my choices a subject of debate. Meanwhile, Jake's absence from my life grew more pronounced. I heard through mutual friends that he was struggling, that my leaving had hit him hard. He was falling into a depression, they said, feeling abandoned and betrayed. Guilt gnawed at me, but I pushed it aside, telling myself I deserved happiness, no matter the cost. Yet, in the quiet moments, away from the glitz and glamour, I couldn't help but reflect on what I'd left behind. There was a simplicity and honesty in my life with Jake that no amount of luxury could replace. But the allure of this new lifestyle, the intoxication of being desired and pampered, was a powerful drug, and I was fully addicted. As I posted another photo of a lavish dinner or a stunning sunset view from a beach resort, part of me wondered if the shine of this new life would ever wear off. If beneath the surface of these perfect images, I would find true contentment or just a hollow echo of what I once had. The more I flaunted this life, the more I felt the weight of the choices I'd made, and the more I wondered if happiness was truly found in the arms of luxury, or in the warmth of a love I had so carelessly left behind. "Have you heard about her?" That's what they whispered now when I walked by. The rumors about my affair with Mr. Reynolds had spread like wildfire, tainting my reputation. Where once I was greeted with smiles, now there were only hushed tones and judgmental glares. I told myself it didn't matter, that my happiness was all that was important. But deep down, each whisper felt like a stab at my dignity. Then, the divorce papers arrived. I wasn't surprised, but the finality of it hit me hard. Jake's signature at the bottom was a quiet surrender, a closing of a chapter that had once been filled with love and promise. I signed them too, telling myself this was for the best, but my heart felt heavy, burdened with the weight of what I had lost. Life with Mr. Reynolds started to change. The man who once wooed me with gifts and sweet nothings began to reveal a controlling side. He dictated what I wore, who I saw, even what I posted on social media. The freedom I thought I had gained by leaving Jake slowly morphed into a gilded cage. Meanwhile, I heard through the grapevine that Jake was doing better. He was focusing on himself, his career. Friends said he seemed happier, more at peace. Hearing this should have brought me some relief, but instead, it deepened the ache of regret. He was moving on, rebuilding his life, while mine felt like it was starting to crumble. The final blow came unexpectedly. I stumbled upon a conversation between Mr. Reynolds and a colleague, a young, ambitious woman from the office. Their flirtatious banter, hidden behind closed doors, was a mirror of how we had once been. The realization that he was cheating on me, just as I had done to Jake, was a cruel twist of fate. I confronted him, my voice shaking with anger and betrayal, but he just shrugged it off, telling me I was being paranoid, overreacting. The irony of it wasn't lost on me. I had been on the other side of this conversation, telling Jake the same lies, weaving the same web of deceit. The apartment that once felt like a sanctuary now felt like a prison. The luxury and excitement that had lured me away from my marriage now seemed hollow, tainted by lies and infidelity. As I lay in bed that night, the reality of my situation settled in. I had left a man who loved me for a fantasy, and now that fantasy was crumbling, leaving me alone, with a tarnished reputation and a heart full of regret. The choices I had made, driven by a selfish pursuit of happiness, had led me to this point. A point where I was neither happy nor at peace. I realized too late that the grass wasn't always greener on the other side, and sometimes, by the time you see the truth, it's already too late. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you do, please take a moment to hit that like button. It really helps me out and lets me know you appreciate the content. Also, if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. Subscribing is a great way to stay updated with all the latest videos and to be part of our growing community. It's quick, it's free, and it ensures you won't miss out on any upcoming content. So go ahead, smash that like button and hit subscribe. Your support means a lot and keeps this channel going. Thanks for watching. I'm not blind, Robert. I yelled, my voice echoing off the walls of his sleek office. I know about you and her. My boss, Robert Reynolds, stood there, his expression cold, unfazed by my outburst. He tried to dismiss it, but I wouldn't let it go. The argument escalated, our words sharp and cutting. In a fit of anger, he fired me. Professional differences, he said, but we both knew it was personal. I walked out of that office, my head spinning. I had lost my job, my dignity, and myself. Desperate and alone, I went to the only person I thought might still care. I stood outside Jake's door, rehearsing my apology. But when he opened the door, the look in his eyes stopped me. It wasn't anger or sadness. It was indifference. I can't, Laura, he said simply, before closing the door. I stood there, a rejected woman, my pleas for forgiveness left unspoken. The friends I once had started distancing themselves. Invitations dried up, calls went unanswered. The few who did talk to me made their disapproval clear. You made your bed, they said. The social circle I had once been a part of now shut me out, their judgment clear in their averted eyes. Meanwhile, I heard about Jake's success. He had received a prestigious award at work, his career reaching new heights. The news should have been a source of joy, but for me, it was a painful reminder of what I had lost. I scrolled through his social media, his smile bright and confident, surrounded by colleagues and friends. He was thriving, moving on from the wreckage I had left behind. I realized then how much he had grown, how far he had come from the man I had left. Sitting alone in my small, rented apartment, the walls seemed to close in on me. The contrast between my life and Jake's was stark. He had found strength and success in the aftermath of our broken marriage, while I was left grappling with the consequences of my choices. The realization that I had been the architect of my own downfall was a bitter pill to swallow. My affair, my lies, my betrayal had led me here to a place of loneliness and regret. I had sacrificed a life built on love and trust for a fleeting thrill, and now I was paying the price. As I lay in bed that night, the silence overwhelming, I couldn't escape the truth. I had made a series of choices that had led me to this moment. Choices that had cost me my marriage, my friends, and my self-respect. And as I drifted off to sleep, a single thought haunted me: had it all been worth it? The silence of the empty apartment echoed my despair. I'd been job hunting for weeks, but every door seemed to slam shut in my face. My tarnished reputation had preceded me. Whispers of my affair and the scandal at my previous job made sure of that. I was struggling to make ends meet, my savings dwindling with each passing day. Meanwhile, Jake, my ex-husband, was moving on. Through the grapevine, I heard he was dating again. Her name was Emily, a colleague from his office, known for her kindness and intelligence. They were a stark contrast to the turbulent and secretive relationship I had with Mr. Reynolds. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of jealousy, imagining Jake finding happiness with someone else. As my financial woes deepened, the inevitable happened. A notice of eviction was slipped under my door. I had fallen too far behind on rent. Staring at the cold, official letter, reality hit me hard. I was about to lose my home. Around the same time, Jake made a grand gesture, proposing to Emily in a romantic, elaborate setup. Pictures of the proposal flooded social media, a beautiful sunset, a violinist, rose petals. It was straight out of a fairy tale. It was a painful reminder of what I had lost, of the life I could have had if I hadn't been so reckless. In a moment of weakness and overwhelming jealousy, I concocted a plan to sabotage their relationship. I reached out to Emily under the guise of offering my congratulations, but with the hidden agenda of sowing seeds of doubt about Jake's character. It was a desperate, spiteful move, driven by a mix of regret and bitterness. I met her for coffee, spinning tales of Jake's supposed faults and past mistakes. I watched her face for signs of doubt, but Emily's response was not what I expected. She listened patiently, then gently told me, "I understand you're hurt, but Jake has been nothing but honest and supportive. I think it's time you move on and find your happiness, just as he has." Her words were a wake-up call. I had become someone I didn't recognize, vindictive, petty, and consumed by jealousy. As I walked back to my soon-to-be-lost apartment, I realized how far I had fallen. I had tried to destroy someone else's happiness out of spite, and it had only highlighted my own misery and loneliness. Sitting amidst packed boxes, the remnants of my failed attempt at sabotage weighing heavily on me, I understood that my actions were driven by a refusal to face the consequences of my choices. Jake had moved on, building a new life with someone who respected and supported him, while I was stuck in a cycle of regret and self-pity. It was time to take responsibility for my life, to stop blaming others for my downfall. I had to find a way to rebuild, to start anew, even if it meant facing a future full of uncertainties. The road ahead would be difficult, but it was necessary. I had lost much, but I still had the chance to reclaim my integrity and build a life, not on the ruins of what I had destroyed, but on the lessons I had learned. In a small town where everyone knows everyone, my actions at the cafe with Emily didn't just ripple, they caused a tidal wave. Within hours, the confrontation between Jake, Emily, and me was the talk of the town. I could feel the weight of every judgmental stare and hushed whisper as I walked down the street. My attempt to sabotage Jake's relationship had backfired, turning me into the villain of the town's latest drama. The news of their marriage soon followed. Pictures of their wedding flooded social media. A beautiful outdoor ceremony, her in a stunning white dress, him looking happier than I'd ever seen him. It was a stark contrast to the mess I'd made of my own life. The sight of their joy was a painful reminder of the love I once had and lost through my own folly. Amidst this personal turmoil, fate seemed to twist the knife further. I got into a car accident, a moment of distraction turning catastrophic. My luxury car, one of the last symbols of the life I thought I wanted, was totaled. Standing there, amidst the twisted metal, I realized how far I'd fallen. From a woman envied for her seemingly perfect life to someone pitted and whispered about. Meanwhile, Jake and Emily embarked on their dream honeymoon. Pictures of them exploring exotic locations, their smiles wide and genuine, filled my social media feed. The stark difference between our lives was like a cold slap. Here I was, dealing with the aftermath of a car crash, both literal and metaphorical, while they were basking in the glow of newlywed bliss. The whispers around town grew louder. I was the subject of pitying glances and disapproving shakes of the head. The once admired woman who had it all was now a cautionary tale. The gossip wasn't just about the affair anymore, it was about how I had spiraled downward since. I tried to keep my head high, to ignore the murmurs and stares, but each one felt like a tiny cut, slowly draining my resolve. I was a pariah in my own town, a ghost of the person I used to be. As I scrolled through Jake and Emily's honeymoon photos, a realization dawned on me. Their happiness was a result of choices made with love and respect, while my misery was born from decisions driven by selfishness and recklessness. They had built something beautiful together, something I had once had the chance to have but threw away. Sitting alone in my sparse apartment, the reality of my situation hit me hard. I had lost more than a husband and a luxury car. I had lost myself, my dignity, and the respect of those around me. The road to redemption, if there was one, seemed long and uncertain. What as I looked at the mess I'd made of my life, I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't keep going down this path. It was time to face my mistakes, to rebuild my life from the rubble of my poor choices. The journey would be hard, but it was necessary. I had to find a way back to the person I once was, to find peace in the aftermath of the storm I had created. Sitting alone in my sparsely furnished apartment, the walls seemed to close in on me. I was destitute, both in wealth and in spirit, a far cry from the life I once boasted about. My reflection in the mirror showed a woman I barely recognized, worn, tired, and filled with regret. Each decision I had made, each step that had led me here, played over in my mind like a broken record. Word of my situation reached Jake, and I half expected, maybe even hoped, he would offer some help. But he didn't. He knew of my struggles, yet chose to stay away. It was a decision I understood, but one that stung deeply. It was the final severing of any ties we had, a clear message that I was truly on my own. In a desperate attempt to rebuild some bridges, I reached out to old friends. The same friends who had been at my wedding, who had shared countless laughs and memories with me. But their responses were cold, distant. "You made your bed," one texted back. The rejection was a bitter pill to swallow. I had alienated everyone who once cared about me, and now I was reaping the consequences. As if to twist the knife further, I saw the announcement on social media. Jake and Emily were expecting a child. The picture of them, beaming with joy, was a stark reminder of the life I could have had. A life filled with love, stability, and now, a growing family. I had dreamed of starting a family with Jake, and seeing him do so with someone else was a painful reminder of the future I had thrown away. I sat there, scrolling through their pictures, each one a testament to their happiness. The love and excitement were palpable, even through the screen. And with each photo, the weight of my regret grew heavier. I had sacrificed a man who loved me, a man who was now going to be a father, for a fleeting thrill that had left me with nothing but sorrow. In the quiet of my apartment, I couldn't escape the truth. My actions, driven by selfish desires and reckless decisions, had led me here. I had chosen a path that brought me momentary excitement, but lasting pain. And now, as I watched Jake build the life I once dreamed of with him, the reality of what I had lost hit me harder than ever. I was alone, a shadow of the person I once was. The journey ahead seemed daunting. There were no easy fixes, no quick solutions. I had to face the consequences of my actions, learn from my mistakes, and somehow find a way to rebuild my life. It was going to be a long road, but it was one I had to walk, step by painful step, if I ever hoped to find peace and redemption. Life, as they say, goes on. For Jake, it moved in leaps and bounds. Emily gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, and their joy was palpable, even from the distance of my life to theirs. The photos of their little family, cradling the newborn, were a constant on social media, a reminder of the life and love that was flourishing without me. Meanwhile, I found myself working at a local diner, a far cry from the plush office job I once prided myself on. The pay was meager, barely enough to cover my bills, let alone the mounting debts that seemed to grow each day. I served coffee and pie with a forced smile, each order a reminder of the stark contrast between my current reality and my past life of luxury. As if to underscore this contrast, I learned that Jake and his family moved into a new, luxurious home. It was everything we had once dreamed of together, a big, beautiful house in the best part of town. I stumbled upon a picture of it online, a sprawling estate with a manicured lawn, and felt a sharp twinge of something. Envy, regret, loss. It was hard to tell. Around the same time, my past caught up with me. Legal notices started arriving, each one a stark reminder of the debts I had accrued during my time with Mr. Reynolds. The unpaid credit card bills, the loans I had taken out, they all demanded attention I couldn't afford to give. I was drowning in a sea of financial troubles, with no lifeline in sight. Then came the news that felt like a punch to the gut. Jake's child, the little girl I had seen grow from a newborn to a bubbly toddler in pictures, was starting kindergarten. They threw a small party to celebrate, a family event full of laughter and joy. Pictures of the celebration found their way to me, showing a happy family, a united front of love and togetherness. Sitting in my small, cramped apartment, the walls adorned with peeling paint rather than happy family portraits, the reality of my situation hit me hard. Jake had moved on, built a new life, a family, a home, everything we had once dreamed of doing together. And here I was, struggling to make ends meet, dealing with legal issues, and serving pies to strangers to get by. The disparity between our lives was stark and painful. I had traded a future of love and happiness for a fleeting affair that left me with nothing but regrets. As I lay in bed that night, the sounds of the city a dull roar outside my window, I couldn't help but reflect on the choices I had made. How different things might have been if I had chosen differently, if I had valued what I had with Jake, if I had not been blinded by temptation and excitement. But life doesn't afford us the luxury of rewinds or do-overs. The choices we make shape our paths, and sometimes, those paths lead us to places of hardship and regret. As I drifted off to sleep, the images of Jake's happy family life contrasting sharply with the four walls of my lonely existence, I knew one thing for sure. The road to redemption was long, and I was just at the beginning. The diner's clattering dishes and sizzling grills were a stark backdrop to my deteriorating health. Sleepless nights and anxiety-filled days took their toll. I could feel my body rebelling against the stress and the less-than-ideal living conditions of my small, dingy apartment. Every cough felt deeper, every ache more pronounced. I knew I needed to see a doctor, but without insurance, it was just another entry on a long list of unaffordables. In stark contrast, Jake's life was flourishing. He had become a well-respected figure in our community, involved in local charities and events. I would hear about his achievements occasionally, fundraisers he organized, awards he received. His success was a testament to his character, the same character I had once fallen in love with, and then so carelessly discarded. As I lay in my bed, the sparse room spinning slightly around me, I couldn't escape the haunting thoughts of what could have been. My life was filled with regret, a constant reminder of the consequences of my actions. I had betrayed a man who loved me, chased after a mirage of excitement and luxury, and ended up alone and broken. The realization was a bitter pill, each day a reminder of my foolishness. Then came a moment that felt like a cruel twist of fate. I saw a social media post, a reflection of Jake's life now. He was at a park with Emily and their daughter, a picture of happiness. The three of them were laughing, their faces glowing with joy and love. He had moved on, built a life that was once our dream, with someone else. I sat there, staring at the screen, the image burning into my memory. That should have been my life, my family. But instead, I was here, in a cold apartment, my health failing, my spirit broken. It was a stark reminder of everything I had lost due to my choices. In a moment of impulse, driven by a mix of longing and despair, I went to that park. I stood there, hidden behind a tree, watching them. Jake, Emily, and their daughter were playing, oblivious to my presence. The laughter, the happiness, the love, it was all there, just out of reach. As I watched them, a family united and joyful, the full weight of my choices came crashing down on me. I had lost my husband, my health, my friends, and my dignity. I was alone, a mere shadow, watching the life I could have had play out in front of me. Turning away from the happy scene, I walked back to my apartment, each step heavier than the last. The realization that I had lost everything, not to fate or bad luck, but to my own misguided decisions, was a burden I would carry with me always. My story was one of loss and regret, a cautionary tale of what happens when you sacrifice true love for fleeting desires. Alone in my room, the sounds of the city a dull hum outside, I lay down, the image of Jake's happy family etched in my mind. In that moment, I understood the harsh truth. My choices had led me here, and there was no one to blame but myself. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges and loneliness, but it was a path I had chosen, a path I now had to walk alone. I hope you get over this soon. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact. Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, I have an unbelievable and intense story to share with you. You know those cheesy rom-coms where the girl stares at her ring, all glowing and happy? Yeah, that's so not my reality anymore. My wedding ring feels more like a shackle than a symbol of love. It sits there, a constant accusation whispering, "You broke your vows. You destroyed everything." Hell, if I focus hard enough, I swear I can hear the tiny metal links rattling. The worst part isn't even the ring, it's the damn scent of him that clings to me. Not even his cologne. Those bottles stand untouched now, but that intimate smell that's purely his. That subtle mix of soap, his natural warmth, and that weird hint of sunshine his hair picks up. It used to be my safe haven, a promise of comfort. Now it's an assault, a tainted reminder of everything I've thrown away. His touch. It used to spark this fizzy feeling under my skin. Now I flinch. Every time his hand brushes mine, his arm settles around my shoulders, I feel like I'm on fire. The worst is the look in his eyes, a flash of confusion before he covers it up. He knows something's wrong, senses the shift between us, but can't figure me out. Of course, he can't. I've become a master of deception. Every lie, every flimsy excuse, is a goddamn brick in this monstrous wall I've built between us. It wasn't a conscious plan. It just happened. One tiny untruth, then another, until this chasm yawned wide, and now he looks at me sometimes like I'm a stranger. I want to rip my own hair out, to scream that it's all my fault, that I'm the one who turned our life into this bleak shadow of what it was. Nights are endless torture. Dreams, if you can even call them that, warp his face into an ugly mask of betrayal and rage. He shouts all the words I deserve. Liar, traitor, worthless, each one twisting the knife deeper. I jolt awake with those accusations ringing in my ears, gasping for breath, soaked in sweat and shame. He sleeps beside me, breathing slow and even, while I inhabit the role of the worst kind of monster, a deceitful wife. The crushing weight of that realization makes it almost impossible to close my eyes again. My phone buzzes, and my heart does a traitorous flip-flop. It's him. The other man. His texts are a lifeline I never should have grabbed onto. Each word feels like a jolt of electricity, a rush of something dangerous and thrilling. He makes me feel seen, desired, things that have been fading away in my marriage for too long. His messages are the only part of my day that don't feel like a suffocating fog of guilt. Of course, I've turned into a freaking pro at hiding. Phone password protected like it holds national secrets. I delete messages obsessively, paranoia gnawing at the back of my mind. Every time a notification pops up, a sliver of terror slices through me. It could be my husband seeing a glimpse of something I can't explain. I live on this constant tightrope, adrenaline buzzing under my skin, the slightest noise making me jumpy. The strain is spilling over. Fights with my husband flare up over nonsense. The dishes left unwashed, a forgotten task. It's not really about these tiny things, though. It's the guilt eating at me, twisting itself into a hot ball of resentment. He doesn't deserve my anger, but I can't stomach my own shame, so I lash out instead. We're circling each other warily, our once safe spaces filled with this unspoken tension. Intimacy. It's the most twisted kind of torture. His touch, the weight of his body, should be everything good and familiar. Instead, Every time we try to be close, all I see is a flashing neon sign in my mind: cheater, liar. I want to push him away, to scream at him that I don't deserve his affection, but that would expose my wretched secret. I'm stuck in this horrible performance, pretending that everything is normal while I feel like I'm fracturing inside. Then came the day I decided, or maybe just gave in to the inevitable. The first actual meeting with the other man, a clandestine coffee date on a lunch break, my lies to my husband flimsy and rushed. The moment I saw him in person, my stomach twisted in a knot of excitement and terror. The conversation flowed like liquid fire, all intoxicating energy and shared secrets. It felt like finally taking a breath after being underwater for too long. Do I even need to say it? It was wrong, all of it, but maybe that's what makes it so damn addictive. It's a release from the prison of guilt I've built, even as it drags me deeper into the mess I've created. The affair, it's like a quicksand pit, dragging me under. Every stolen meeting, every heated text exchange, pulls me in deeper. It's this sick cycle of thrill and agony. The other man whispers promises into the night, words I desperately want to believe. Yet, even when I'm caught up in the moment, there's a nagging voice in my head saying, this is madness. This won't end well. Somewhere on the periphery, there's the self-loathing, a constant churning in my gut, a sense of disgust that I can't quite shake. I look in the mirror and see a stranger, a person I don't even recognize anymore. This pit of betrayal inside me widens every day, eating away at whatever good was left. But hey, my brain has an excuse for everything, doesn't it? Like some twisted defense attorney, it starts listing off justifications. My husband, he's been busy, preoccupied. Sure, marriage can ebb and flow, but I craved more attention. The other man, he filled that emptiness, made me feel wanted again. The word, lonely, pops up a lot in my internal monologue. Makes this whole mess feel a bit less monstrous, somehow. Thing is, the high of the affair is starting to curdle. The secrecy, constant fear of discovery, the lies piled on lies. It's exhausting. Turns out, cheating doesn't fix broken things, just adds a whole new layer of brokenness. It's like putting a dirty bandage on an infected wound. It doesn't help the problem, it just makes it worse. Worst of all, I think my husband knows. Not the details, thank God, but he senses something is deeply off. It's in the way he looks at me, the slight hesitation before he touches me, his questions, those are the worst. Simple, innocent things like, you seem preoccupied lately, or, is everything okay? Each one slices through my carefully constructed facade, making me break out in a cold sweat. His concern feels like a heavy chain around my neck, a constant reminder of the monstrous deception I'm living. The word, confession, hangs in my brain, refusing to take shape on my lips. Part of me knows it's the only way out of this mess, a desperate attempt to salvage some shred of who I used to be. But then the terror kicks in. What if he leaves? What if he never looks at me the same way again? Our entire life, the house, the routines we built, everything we said was forever, it all crumbles in my mind. I imagine the devastation on his face, the shattering of his trust, and it cripples me, keeps me trapped in this suffocating prison of silence. Meanwhile, the other man is no savior. He's become demanding. His messages shift from sweet nothings to something almost possessive. Jealousy seeps through, questions about my life, veiled threats if I dare suggest slowing down. Our affair, once an exhilarating escape, is turning into another kind of cage. He's not some knight in shining armor, he's an anchor dragging me to the bottom. And then the slip, the almost inevitable close call. My husband picks up my phone to hand it to me, and just for a second, there it is. A text from the other man, a suggestive nickname flashing on the screen. The blood drains from my face. I manage to play it off, invent some lie about a coworker, but the damage is done. My heart pounds against my ribs, a relentless drumbeat of panic. When my husband turns away, I vomit in the bathroom. The fear isn't abstract anymore, it's nausea, shaking hands, cold sweat. With a surge of clarity, I know this has to end. The guilt, the anxiety, it's a parasite sucking the life out of me. I should feel relieved to finally act, but instead, there's a hollow dread. I'm trapped by the consequences of my own making. This clean break I desperately want is an illusion that will shatter into 1,000 ugly shards the moment it begins. Ending the affair proves messier than I anticipated. The other man cycles through fury, pleading, guilt trips, even veiled threats to keep me under his thumb. It's ugly, the kind of desperate showdown that makes me realize exactly how deep the rabbit hole goes. Cutting him off is agonizing, like surgery without anesthesia, each exchange leaving a raw, painful wound. He won't take no for an answer. The other man bombards me, calls I ignore, messages overflowing with manipulative misery, a few laced with thinly veiled threats. Wouldn't want your husband to find out how you really are. It's relentless, and the terror of exposure is a constant hum under my skin. Sleeping? Forget about it. Every sound, every shift of light makes me envision my husband discovering the truth in the ugliest way possible. And then, the bomb drops. My husband finds an earring on the floor. A single, flashy hoop that looks absolutely nothing like anything I own. It sits on his palm like a malevolent insect, gleaming with accusation. Panic is an understatement. My guts clench, my mind races, searching for a plausible story that won't immediately explode in my face. He doesn't yell, but there's a tremor in his voice when he finally asks, "Is there something you need to tell me?" It's a question poised on the edge of a cliff, and I'm already falling. I can lie, make up a frantic excuse, maybe buy myself a little more time. But what's the point? The noose is tightening, the air is turning thin. All that comes out is a pathetic sob. Then the words start spilling, clumsy and jumbled, a torrent of disgust mixed with desperate pleas for forgiveness. Each painful detail feels like a knife I'm twisting into him. He doesn't interrupt. He just sits there, absorbing it all, his face turning ashen. Seeing his devastation is like a perverse mirror. Every tear he sheds, every flinch away from my touch, echoes the torment I've been silently inflicting on myself. His hurt is a physical force in the room, a weight crushing the last bit of deluded hope that this might be somehow fixable. There are no words to describe that emptiness, the horrifying realization that I've shattered the life we built, broken something that might be beyond repair. The silence stretches between us, thick and suffocating. Each tick of the clock sounds like a hammer on a nail. I want to scream, to break something, just to shatter this horrible stasis. Yet, I also want to curl into a ball and disappear, become invisible to his pained eyes. He used to look at me with love, or even simple amusement. Now there's just a void in his gaze, a chilling emptiness. The home we built, warm and welcoming, suddenly feels like a crumbling mausoleum. His voice cuts through the quiet, hesitant yet razor sharp. Is there someone else? The question I dreaded most has finally arrived. I nod, a pathetic little jerk of my head, unable to meet his eyes. There's no hiding it anymore, no more excuses will plaster over the gaping wound I've created. The shift in him is terrifying. He's always been so calm, such a gentle soul. Now, his entire body tenses, a tremor in his hands. His voice rises, tinged with a wrath I've never seen before. It's laced with disgust, with betrayal, with the echo of 1,000 shattered promises. My tears flow freely now, useless and shameful. Apologies tumble out of me, a pathetic litany of "I'm sorries" that sound hollow even to my own ears. I'm not begging for forgiveness, there's no way he could grant that. I just need to say it, maybe to convince myself that some tiny, broken part of me still recognizes the depth of my actions. Get out, the command slices into me. Each word is laced with ice, a complete severing of any warmth that remained. His face is a mask of cold fury, every trace of the man I knew is gone. I obey without protest. What else can I do, when I've destroyed any right to remain in this haven he called home? Packing is a mechanical act, hands move, shoving clothes into a suitcase I haven't touched in years, but my mind feels numb. Each familiar item, a sweater he once complimented, the fuzzy socks I wore while reading on the couch, is a hammer blow. It's the concrete reality of what I've done, the dismantling of this life I no longer deserve. Our goodbye echoes with emptiness. My words of apology stick in my throat, useless remnants of shattered vows. He doesn't look at me, just stares at a spot on the wall, his form rigid with hurt. The silence feels more deafening than any screams could be. Each step towards the door takes monumental effort. I'm walking away from everything I've ever known, yet I'm not sure where I'm going. The only certainty is crushing, unbearable regret. It's a constant companion, a low thrum of self-hatred that I know will haunt me for a long, long time. A friend takes me in, offering a place to stay and a shoulder to cry on. Yet even among kindness, shame burns like an open wound. I see myself through her eyes, a cautionary tale, the woman who threw it all away. The judgment is unspoken, but it doesn't need to be. I judge myself far more harshly. Then my phone vibrates. It's a text from him, short and devoid of emotion. We need to talk about the future. The words send a jolt of panic and a flicker of something, hope, maybe? It's such a dangerous, pathetic little spark. Yet, it ignites despite my best efforts. Even after everything, some shred of me can't fully let go of what we had. The possibility, however slim, that there's a path forward hangs like a question mark, both terrifying and irresistible. The whispers swirl faster than a wildfire. News of my betrayal seeps into every corner of my world, pitying glances from neighbors, the abrupt silences when I enter a room, the once friendly texts that abruptly cease. My social circle shatters, some condemning my actions with vicious certainty, others offering awkward, faltering support that feels more like a grim obligation than genuine compassion. The other man desperately tries to worm his way back into my life. His calls and messages make my skin crawl. It's like finally seeing him clearly, his empty promises, the possessiveness masked as care. I block him with a ruthless resolve that's a stark contrast to how easily I fell for his manipulation before. No more games, no more poisonous contact. He was a symptom of my brokenness, not the solution. Sleep becomes my enemy. Each night replays the worst of it all. My husband's shattered face, the cruel words hurled at me, the crushing weight of my mistakes. It's an infinite loop of guilt and despair, the dark hours stretching into an abyss haunted by relentless introspection. I see my choices with brutal clarity, knowing they're inked permanently into my story. My hand hovers over his name in my phone more than once. Finally, with a mix of dread and a sliver of desperation, I type a message. Words can't fix what I broke, but they're the only bridge I can try to build across this chasm. It's a small step, sending that tiny text filled with vulnerability and fear. There's no guarantee he'll respond, but clinging to the numbness isn't an option anymore. We choose to meet in a quiet coffee shop, neutral territory tainted by painful memories. It used to be our spot, a place for easy conversation and shared laughter. Now, the air between us feels thick enough to suffocate. His eyes are guarded, etched with a weariness that mirrors the exhaustion burning through my own soul. We're strangers bound by a shared history, and the path back to any kind of understanding, if it even exists, looks impossibly long and steep. Our conversation isn't pretty. It's a raw, messy excavation of the past. His voice, once so familiar, now rasps with barely contained hurt. How could you? And what was I not enough? Hang heavy in the silence between us. My answers are clumsy, a tangle of self-hatred, confusion, and stumbling apologies. Neither of us has the language to navigate this wreckage, but there's a desperate need to somehow try. The suggestion of therapy comes with a sigh of defeat. It's not a magical fix, we both know that. Reconciliation might be a distant star, something to squint at rather than reach for. But maybe, just maybe, there's a path toward understanding in this clinical space, a safe place to dissect the ruins of what we once were. The therapist is gentle but unflinching. Her questions cut like scalpels. Why? Is the constant drumbeat. Why risk everything? Why him? Why not seek help within the marriage? My explanations feel flimsy, even to myself. I talk about feeling invisible, about craving something I couldn't define. All of it sounds so pathetic when laid bare. And always, The question hangs unspoken. Was it worth it? We spiral into familiar territory, old resentments flaring amidst the ashes of my betrayal. His voice cracks as he lists my wrongdoings, a litany of deception and pain. My own tongue lashes out in self-defense, the same arguments echoing emptily in the sterile room. It's a sickening loop of hurt, a broken record neither of us can quite stop yet. My apologies are nothing but noise at this point. Even to my own ears, they lack sincerity, a mere formality rather than an attempt to bridge the yawning gap between us. Actions, not words, are the only thing that might matter now. But I'm paralyzed, unsure what those actions should be, terrified that nothing I do will ever be enough. The waiting room of my individual therapist's office feels like a confessional booth. I'm here not to fix my marriage, that might be beyond repair, but to unravel the tangled mess within me. The therapist doesn't judge but prods. She wants to dig into the why, the hidden vulnerabilities and twisted needs that led me to this destructive choice. It's uncomfortable, dredging up past insecurities and patterns I barely dared to acknowledge before. Days bleed into each other, a blur of self-analysis and raw regret. I journal, pouring out the ugliness onto the page, hoping to find clarity in the mess of thoughts. Everything hinges on that one question. Is there any chance of salvaging the wreckage I caused, or is our marriage an empty shell destined to crumble into dust? Each day, I face him, a broken reflection of my guilt mirrored back in his eyes. We move haltingly through routines, the weight of unspoken questions hanging in the air. Surprisingly, it's him who hesitantly brings up forgiveness. It's a word loaded with pain and potential, a distant peak we might strive for but may never reach. We both know forgiveness isn't a switch, that there's no guarantee it will ever fully arrive. But we recognize it as a possible, necessary goal if we want any chance at building something from the ashes. My next steps are hesitant but determined. Apologies are meaningless now, it's actions that hold any weight. I become meticulous about respecting his boundaries, about giving him space when he needs it. Kindness replaces defensiveness, a conscious choice even when the hurt in me still flails in protest. I don't do this to earn my way back in, but because it's the only way I can regain even a shred of self-respect. Whether there'll be reconciliation, or if we'll simply walk separate paths, remains unknown. The future is a blank page, terrifying in its emptiness. All I have is the present, and the relentless work of healing myself. Perhaps, if I truly change, it will open a possibility for a different kind of future. If not, I'll at least walk away from this knowing I didn't cling to the broken version of who I was. Stay tuned to find out how this shocking tale unfolds, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more gripping stories. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. The clock struck 11 p.m., and the other side of the bed was still empty. Working late again, she had texted, a message that had become all too familiar over the past few weeks. I tried to shake off the unsettling feeling, telling myself it was just the demands of her new job. But things started adding up, or rather, they didn't. Her phone, once open and accessible, now required a password I didn't know. Whispered conversations in the other room and quick exits to take calls had become the norm. It wasn't just the late nights, it was the secrecy that gnawed at me. Mike said he saw her with someone at Marcos. Looked cozy. A friend's voice echoed in my head, a statement I had initially dismissed. Stress, I had convinced myself, was making me paranoid, misinterpreting innocent interactions. However, the same friend pulled me aside weeks later, his expression grave. I've got proof, he whispered, sliding his phone across the table. The image on the screen, a candid shot of her laughing with someone I didn't recognize, felt like a punch in the gut. Confrontation was inevitable. Is there something you need to tell me? I asked that evening, her arrival interrupting the silence of our now cold living room. The question hung in the air, a palpable tension building between us. There's nothing to tell. You're being paranoid, she retorted, her defense as swift as it was sharp. The denial was expected, yet it stung, the accusation of distrust adding salt to the open wound. The evidence was undeniable, Yet her words attempted to sow the seed of doubt in my mind. Was I misinterpreting the situation, or was the foundation of our marriage truly crumbling? The quest for truth became my sole focus, propelling me into a whirlwind of actions and decisions that would irreversibly change our lives. As shadows lengthened and the office buildings emptied, I found myself parked a discreet distance from her workplace. Anxiety gnawed my stomach, but determination steeled my resolve. When she finally emerged, her hurried steps didn't head towards home, but to a secluded park bathed in the golden hues of the setting sun. I followed, a silent specter in her wake. There, under the guise of anonymity provided by the dimming light, she met him. Their embrace, long and tender, shattered any lingering denials within me. From behind the cover of a tree, I captured their betrayal with my phone, each click a hammer to my heart. Fueled by a mix of rage and despair, I confronted him the next day. "Stay away from my wife," I demanded, my voice a controlled calm that belied the turmoil inside. He reeled back, genuine shock etched on his features. "I thought she was single," he stammered, his admission doing little to quell the storm within me. Armed with undeniable evidence, I faced her that evening. The photos laid bare on the table between us served as the silent accuser in our confrontation. Her initial attempts at denial quickly crumbled under the weight of proof. "I felt neglected," she confessed, her voice a mix of defiance and sorrow. The words struck me, a poignant reminder of the distance that had grown between us. Our argument spiraled, a maelstrom of accusations, justifications, and hurt. Yet, beneath the tumult lay a stark realization. The foundation of our marriage had cracked, not from this singular act of betrayal, but from a gradual erosion of connection and understanding. The path forward was uncertain, fraught with pain, and the daunting task of rebuilding, should we choose it. But in that moment, the immediate agony of betrayal overshadowed all else, a vivid scar upon the fabric of our shared life. The moment hung between us, charged and heavy. "You need to choose," I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Her eyes, once familiar and warm, now held a tumultuous sea of indecision and fear. "Please, I need time to think," she whispered, her pleas slicing through the remnants of my resolve. That night, the walls of our home felt suffocating, each photograph a stark reminder of happier times now tainted. In search of solace, I sought refuge at a friend's house, a temporary escape from the storm that had become my life. The silence there allowed my thoughts to race, contemplating futures I had never envisioned. The following day, amidst a haze of disbelief and anger, I found myself sitting across from a lawyer, discussing divorce proceedings. "Are you sure about this?" the lawyer asked, his voice a tether to the reality of the situation. I wasn't sure of anything anymore. But then, she reached out, her voice laced with regret and desperation. "It was a mistake. Can we try to fix this?" she asked. Against the counsel of friends and the jagged shards of my pride, I agreed to counseling sessions. A part of me clung to the hope of salvaging the ruins of our marriage. Counseling sessions began, a sterile room attempting to contain the raw, unruly emotions between us. She seemed distant during these sessions, her commitment as absent as the ring that once circled her finger. Doubt gnawed at me, a relentless companion whispering dark thoughts. Then, one evening, a glimpse of her phone shattered the precarious peace we had built. Messages, unmistakably planning to meet him again, flashed before my eyes, a digital confession of her unresolved feelings. The betrayal wasn't just repeated, it was deepened, reinforcing the chasm that had opened between us. Confronted with this new evidence, I was thrust back into the tempest of betrayal and hurt. The counseling, the attempts at reconciliation, all felt like a facade, a cruel charade played at the expense of my hope and forgiveness. The path forward was now shrouded in uncertainty and pain, a journey through the aftermath of broken vows and shattered trust. The air was thick with tension as we stepped out of the counselor's office, the last session ending on a note far from resolution. My mind raced, replaying the discovery of her messages, a fresh wound on an already battered heart. "We need to talk," I said, the urgency in my voice cutting through the hum of the busy street. Our conversation quickly escalated, voices rising despite the public setting. Accusations and hurt feelings spilled out, an open display of our fractured relationship. "I need space. I can't do this here," she said, turning away, leaving me standing alone amidst the chaos of our unraveling lives. The solitude of the house echoed my turmoil, a stark reminder of the chasm between us. Betrayal, once a foreign concept in our marriage, had become its defining feature. With a heavy heart, I began the daunting task of preparing for divorce, each step feeling like a betrayal of the vows we once shared. During this tumultuous time, my friend, the one who had first opened my eyes to the affair, stood by me. "You'll get through this," he assured me, a rock amidst the swirling currents of my despair. His support was a lifeline, a reminder that I wasn't navigating this storm alone. Amidst the paperwork and legal consultations, word reached me that she was seeking advice on how to mend the rift, to win me back. It was a sliver of hope in a dark time, yet my heart was guarded, fortified against further hurt. Then, she returned home, her presence filling the space that had grown cold in her absence. "I'm sorry, and I want to make this right," she said, her eyes searching mine for any sign of forgiveness. The sincerity in her voice tugged at the frayed edges of my resolve. We sat down, embarking on a marathon discussion about our future, if such a thing still existed for us. The conversation was raw, a candid exploration of the pain we had inflicted upon each other and the monumental task of rebuilding trust. The path forward was fraught with uncertainty, yet the mere act of dialogue, of opening ourselves to the vulnerability of healing, felt like a tentative step towards reconciliation. As the night wore on, our words carved out a tentative ceasefire, a fragile foundation upon which to rebuild. The journey ahead promised to be arduous, marked by moments of doubt and fear, but the possibility of redemption, however distant, sparked a faint glow of hope in the darkness. The decision to give our marriage another chance felt like stepping onto uncertain ground, but it was a step I was willing to take. We laid down clear boundaries, a framework within which we hoped to rebuild what had been damaged. It was a tentative beginning, but it was a thaw. We invested time in each other, carving out moments from our days to reconnect. I noticed a shift in her behavior. She was more open, more willing to share her thoughts and feelings. It was a change that breathed a cautious hope into the hollow spaces of our relationship. To further this newfound connection, we planned a weekend getaway. It was an opportunity to step away from the reminders of our past struggles and focus solely on us. Those days were a blend of conversations, laughter, and shared silences that spoke volumes. It felt like we were rediscovering each other, finding new depths in familiar waters. However, upon our return, a shadow fell across the brightness of our rekindling. She fell ill, a persistent malaise that prompted a visit to the doctor. The atmosphere was tense, charged with an unspoken fear of what might be uncovered. The news she brought back shattered the fragile peace we had built. "I'm pregnant," she said, the words hanging between us like a sword. The joy that should have accompanied such news was absent, replaced by a heavy silence. The timing was suspicious, a cruel reminder of the chasm that had once divided us. The turmoil of emotions was overwhelming. The specter of past betrayals loomed large, casting doubt on the paternity of the child. It was a question I wished I never had to ask, a doubt that pained me to voice. "We need a paternity test," I said, the words feeling foreign on my tongue. Demanding a paternity test was a decision that came from a place of hurt and uncertainty. It was a step back into the shadows, even as we had been moving towards the light. The future of our family, our marriage, hinged on the results of that test. It was a moment that held both the possibility of complete shattering and the hope for a stronger rebuilding, but it was a step we had to take to move forward, wherever that path might lead. The days dragged on, each one heavier than the last, as we awaited the results of the paternity test. The air in our home was thick with the tension of unspoken fears and the weight of impending truths. Our conversations, once on the mend towards normalcy, now skirted around the giant elephant in the room, each of us lost in our whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. Then, the call came, a moment frozen in time. "I'm sorry," the voice on the other end said. "The results confirm you are not the father." The words struck with the force of a sledgehammer, shattering the fragile hope I had harbored. In that instant, the foundation of our rebuilt trust crumbled into dust. The revelation plunged us into a crisis unlike any we had faced before. Our marriage, already scarred by past betrayals, now teetered on the brink of an abyss. The future, once again, became a murky path, obscured by hurt and uncertainty. In the midst of this storm, she stood before me, tears in her eyes, voice trembling. "I'm so sorry, please. Can we find a way to get through this? Can we raise this child together?" Her plea cut through me, a stark reminder of the love that had once bound us, now intertwined with the pain of betrayal. Torn between the remnants of that love and the sharp sting of betrayal, I found myself at a crossroads. The decision before me was monumental, not just a matter of my relationship with her, but of the innocent life caught in our turmoil. Seeking guidance, I turned to friends and family, each conversation adding layers to my internal struggle. Opinions varied widely, from staunch support for a fresh start to warnings against the consequences of unresolved issues. The cacophony of advice left me more conflicted, a heart divided by love and hurt. In search of clarity, we returned to counseling, this time to navigate the treacherous waters of this new reality. The sessions were intense, a raw opening of wounds and exploration of possibilities. We dissected our feelings, the deep-seated hurt, the lingering love, and the potential for forgiveness. Each session peeled back layers of pain and doubt, revealing glimpses of understanding and empathy. Yet, the journey was far from over. The path ahead promised challenges and required a strength I wasn't sure I possessed. But amidst the turmoil, a flicker of hope remained, a beacon guiding us through the uncertainty of what lay ahead. The decision to forgive wasn't made in a moment of clarity or a burst of enlightenment. It was a gradual realization, a deep understanding that the child, innocent in our turmoil, deserved a chance at a stable, loving family. My wife's plea for forgiveness, her remorse palpable, tipped the scales. Love, I realized, wasn't just a feeling but a choice to rebuild from the ruins of betrayal. Informing our families about the situation was our next step, one fraught with apprehension. The reactions were as varied as the individuals themselves, ranging from supportive understanding to palpable disappointment. Yet, beneath the cacophony of opinions, there was a thread of hope that we clung to, a belief in the possibility of redemption and healing. Preparations for the child's arrival marked a time of cautious optimism. Amidst discussions of names and nursery colors, there was an underlying current of our ongoing healing process. My wife severed all contact with the child's biological father, a decision that was both painful and necessary, underscoring her commitment to our family. The birth of the child was a watershed moment, bringing with it a deluge of emotions. The challenges were manifold, from sleepless nights to navigating our roles as parents under the shadow of past events. Yet, there were moments of undeniable joy, the first smile, the first steps, each a milestone that brought us closer together. Trust, once shattered, was painstakingly rebuilt, day by day, action by action. We focused on the well-being of our family, understanding that the foundation we laid now was critical for the future. Counseling sessions continued, a space where we could navigate our feelings and learn to communicate more effectively. The experience, as harrowing as it was, tested the very fabric of our marriage. Yet, rather than succumbing to the strain, we emerged stronger, more resilient. The commitment to each other, once questioned, was now renewed, fortified by the trials we had overcome. Accepting the child as my own was a journey in itself. Fatherhood, I discovered, transcends biology. It's a role defined by love, responsibility, and the unwavering support one provides. Embracing this role, I found a sense of purpose and fulfillment that transcended the initial turmoil. In the end, we emerged not unscathed, but undeniably stronger. Our marriage, tested by the fiercest of storms, stood as a testament to our resilience and commitment. The road ahead was still paved with challenges, but together, we faced it with a family stronger for the trials it had endured. If this story left you stunned, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more gripping tales and life lessons. Join our community and never miss a moment of these dramatic twists.
Hey everyone! Get ready for a shocking story of betrayal and the unexpected fallout. Today's story is called, I Caught My Wife of 9 Years Cheating Behind Walmart. I can't believe I am writing about this, but yep, it's true. I caught my wife of 9 years cheating on me behind Walmart. I had to deal with my wife and a guy I did not know walking hand in hand out of an exit in the back of Walmart. I wish I was kidding. My wife has been staying out until 4 a.m. for the past 3 months or so every single day. She was claiming she was trying to get more overtime. She's younger than me, only by 2 years, but she looks much younger than her age. You can imagine that I was very upset when this happened, though now I am completely fine with it because she is on her way out permanently. I try to tell people about my wife cheating and they just don't believe me, or they offer some BS advice like just give her some space. No one really understands what happens behind closed doors in relationships these days. People just really don't give a crap. It all started when one day my wife said she was coming home from her shift at Walmart. She worked as an assistant manager. Her shift was supposed to end at 7 p.m., but by midnight she wasn't home. I was calling her and texting but no response. So I decided to take a trip to go see if everything was okay. It's about a 20-minute drive or so. This is a 24-hour Walmart, so it wasn't closed. As I pull up to Walmart, I see her car in the parking lot. As I pull into the parking lot, I look at her car, but it looks like no one is in the vehicle. So I parked my car and go inside. I go to her department but I don't see her. I really don't see anyone around. Everyone is scattered. A couple people that work with her acknowledge me and wave. I wave back. I then proceed to the back of Walmart. I figured during her shift she had to go back there for something. So I walk toward the back of Walmart and go to the break room. Still no sign of my wife. I go to another spot where they unload the trucks. No wife there either. As I am walking back toward the front entrance, I see her leaving through one of the exits at the side of Walmart. She has a man with her. She's holding hands with him and they're walking toward his car in the parking lot. My heart is racing but I had to calm down. I don't know why I did it, but I pulled out my phone to start recording. I didn't say a word. I kept my distance. I wanted to see where they were going. They walked to his white SUV. They got in and drove out into the parking lot. He stopped at my wife's vehicle. She got out to get something out of her car. As soon as they left, I ran to my car. I was parked a little far and followed them. The first place they stopped at was a gas station. They both went inside and came back out and kept driving. After the stop at the gas station, I lost them for like 10 minutes or so because traffic blocked me from getting close to where he turned. I got lucky this time. It took me about 15 more minutes to catch up with them again. He then pulled into a hotel parking lot. It's an Econo-Lodge hotel. He pulls into one of the parking spots that is near the hotel lobby. They get out and they walk into the lobby. As I am following them, I was thinking, how long does it take to rent a room? How much time is left on her shift? Well, she was supposed to get off at 7 p.m. At least that's what she told me. And what the hell is he going to do with my wife the whole night? I was freaking out. I followed them close enough so that if they walked anywhere else that I could follow them still. She was talking to him as they walked toward the room. The sign for the hotel says check in at 3 p.m. and check out at 11 a.m. The clock strikes 1:30 a.m. and no one is coming or going from their rooms. There's maybe about 5 people in the lobby itself and all of them are sitting around watching TV. She opens the door and I see that they are both still dressed. She closes the door behind them. I froze at that moment. Should I run in and knock on the door? But I didn't. You know what I did? I sent her a picture and video recording via text of them holding hands, and them holding hands walking into the hotel lobby. After that, I got in my car and drove home, wishing that this had never happened. My wife finally made it home and started asking all these questions. Why did I follow her? I told her, you told me you got off at 7 p.m., but you know what? We don't need to discuss anything. I am filing for divorce. She was in shock right after I said that. She then asked, can we talk? I said, no, there is nothing to talk about. I caught you cheating on me and I have proof of it. You just need to leave. She then says, I don't have anywhere to go. I threw my hands up and said, that's not my problem. If you want to stay here, I will change the locks and lock you out. You can come back in a few days after you find a place. Meanwhile, I am going to sleep because I have been up all night dealing with this. We both go our separate ways. She goes into the guest bedroom, closes the door behind her. I go to our bedroom to get some rest. I get up at about 4 p.m., walk out to the living room and notice the door to the guest bedroom is open. I walk up and peek in, she's gone. I then walk back to my bedroom and notice that most of her clothes are gone. I look out the window of our apartment and her car is gone. I am thinking to myself, she must have come in while I was sleeping. At that moment, I proceeded to call a couple of lawyers to see about divorce procedures here in Virginia. I was going to file for divorce today. Called one lawyer. He kind of gave me some bad news. He said that we had to have lived apart from each other for at least 1 year for a no-fault divorce. He then asked, have I been apart from her for at least a year? I said no. He said I could still file for divorce, but it will be a long process and could get expensive. I asked the attorney, what about a separation agreement? He then tells me the state doesn't have separation agreement laws per se. The only option is no-fault divorce or fault. At this point, after talking to the attorney, the only option I really had was to file for divorce. However, the wife was not home to sign for service of process. So I had no choice but to file in court to have her served. A few minutes later, my wife called and asked, can she come back home? I said, you can, but I am filing for divorce still. My mind hasn't changed. She then tells me she has nowhere to go. At that point I didn't care, but I didn't have the resources to file for divorce yet. I then tell her you can have the guest bedroom until this is all sorted out. A few weeks go by and I go to my attorney's office and file for the divorce. I then call my wife and tell her that I have filed for the divorce. She asked if we are going to work on fixing things. I told her that wasn't an option anymore. After everything that has been done, no forgiveness or giving another chance would be given. You betrayed me and I just can't deal with the fact you cheated right in front of my face. I will not be able to get that image out of my head for a long time. And I don't know why you would do that because we were married and you took vows to be loyal to me. I wanted to fix everything, but after this it was just too much for me. She then started crying and apologizing, saying that she could not live without me in her life. I told her at this point she can't have us back. You killed any chance for that with this loser you cheated on me with. She then starts to yell at me saying, what am I supposed to do? I said, did he open your eyes and promise you a better life? Well, you can now pursue that so-called better life. I would rather be alone than spend time with you after what you did. I told her you have the guest bedroom to lay your head until you find a place of your own. She then says I can't find a place. I then tell her you have your parents or the guy you cheated on me with, or save your money so you can get a place of your own. She then goes on about the guy she cheated with, saying I don't talk to him anymore. She then started crying hysterically, asking me why am I doing this to her? She never thought I was going to do anything like this. I said, listen, you did this to yourself by cheating on me. This is the consequence. You made your bed, now you can lay in it. The phone call ends with us yelling at each other. I get home after my visit with the attorney. My wife's car is in one of our parking spots. I come in and notice her sitting on the couch on the phone talking to someone. She then hangs up and looks at me and says, can we talk? I said, what? We just got through yelling at each other. What's there to talk about? The divorce is in the works and we both will be free soon enough. She then asked, could we try marriage counseling? I looked at her and said, no, I don't need counseling. You might need it. I tell her you cheated and no marriage counselor will make that go away. I told her to stop talking to me as I wasn't in the mood to talk to her. She was officially past tense in my book. Even though the divorce wasn't final, I was done, mentally checked out. She starts crying and goes to the guest bedroom. I meanwhile go to my bedroom and put my work bag on the bed. I come back out to the couch to gather my thoughts. I am still heartbroken over this, but the good thing is I can move on with my life. I don't have any kids with this woman or any commingled debts. I was almost going to surprise her with the anniversary gift to the Bahamas, but glad I don't have to spend money for that. I am trying to figure out what I did for her to throw away 9 years of marriage for a roll in the hay for a loser. This guy still lives with her parents. Amazing. This divorce can't happen fast enough. I just want to move on with my life. Thank you for watching and listening to the video. Remember, if you enjoyed the content, please like, comment, and consider subscribing so that I may continue to bring you